Hi, I'm Pastor Kurt, and this is your 5-minute Bible study. Today, we're going to be looking at Matthew chapter 10, verses 1 through 42. So this is a lot of material right here. But all of this is about when Jesus sends out the disciples. When we look at this section, it begins with a list of the names of the 12 disciples, which is fine. But if I were to ask you right now, how many disciples can you name? How many could you remember? Right? We know there's 12, but how many can you think of? Probably you can remember Peter and James and John and Andrew, those 4 fishermen. You might think of Judas, since he betrayed Jesus. You might think of Thomas, the one who's famous for the doubting scene. That's 6. That's half of them. Can you remember the others? Do you know their stories? Probably not, right? Also, if you compare the Gospels and compare the lists of the 12 disciples, they don't always match up. You would think they would, but they don't. Some of the disciples' names are the same, like the ones I just mentioned, but some of the others, right? They're not as well known. I point that out to show you that sometimes when we follow Jesus, our names become known to others, but sometimes they don't. But that's okay, because Jesus still calls you to follow too. Those other 6 disciples whose names you don't know, Jesus still used them to make a difference in the world too. So even if your name isn't well known to others, even if you're not as famous as Peter and Andrew and James and John and Thomas and Judas, Jesus can still use you to share his good news with others too. As we go on in this section, we'll see that Jesus reminds these disciples that following him is going to be a hard life. In particular, he points out to them that just as people pushed back against him, so they're going to push back against his disciples. Jesus also reminds them to rely on the kindness of others. It's not that Jesus wants them to take advantage of other people, but rather it's a reminder that they're not in this alone. There are people who will support them and encourage them and cheer them on and help them out, just like there are for you. You are not in this alone. You are not following Jesus all by yourself. Think about your church community. Think about others who surround you, who love you, who support you in faith. These are people who remind you that, hey, we're in this together. We're doing this hard life of following Jesus, and we're doing it together. In the midst of this hard life of following Jesus, though, Jesus reminds his disciples that God is still with them. In particular, there's this wonderful section where he says that God knows even the hairs of your head. And he says that God knows the sparrows of the field and that you are worth more than many sparrows. In the midst of this hard, difficult life of being a disciple, whose name might be known or might not be known, God still knows you. That's pretty cool. Even if other people don't recognize you or congratulate you or thank you for being a disciple of Jesus, which they might not, God still knows. God still knows how you're following Jesus, and that's awesome. Jesus talks also about losing our life and finding our life. Sometimes in this world, we think life is all about me and my happiness and acquiring stuff for myself and my little circle of people. No. Life is about giving up yourself for the sake of others. That doesn't mean let people walk all over you and take advantage of you, though. What it means is you put them before yourself. You think of them more than you think of yourself, which can be hard for some people. But this is what it means to live this hard life of discipleship. So there's a lot of good stuff in this section here in chapter 10. So I encourage you to go back and reread some of it, because Jesus calls you to be a disciple. It's hard, but Jesus wants you to help share his love too. There's your 5-minute Bible study for the day. Please remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.